There's a number that separates two completely different versions of you. Not rich you versus poor you. Not successful you versus struggling you. It's the exact point where your brain stops treating money like oxygen and starts treating it like a tool. That number is $10,000. And the weird part? Almost no one talks about why this specific threshold breaks something open in your psychology. But once you understand what's actually happening at that moment, you'll realize it has almost nothing to do with the money itself. Here's what we know from the data. In 2023, the Federal Reserve reported that 37% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency with cash. Not 4,000, 400. Meanwhile, the median savings account balance in the US sits at around $8,000. Close, but not quite there. And then there's this. Behavioral economists have identified $10,000 as a psychological inflection point, a place where people's financial behavior fundamentally changes, not because the number is magic, but because of what it represents in your operating system. Most people think saving money is about discipline, delayed gratification, cutting back on lattes. That's not wrong, but it misses the deeper mechanism. What actually happens when you cross $10,000 is that your relationship with risk inverts, and that inversion changes everything about how you move through the world. Let's pull this apart. When you have less than $1,000 in your account, your brain is doing something specific. It's running a background calculation every single day. Rent is due in 12 days, groceries, gas, phone bill, insurance. You're not just budgeting, you're playing Tetris with your survival, and that takes up processing power. In 2013, researchers Sendil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir published a study showing that financial scarcity reduces cognitive function by the equivalent of losing 13 IQ points. 13! That's the same as pulling an all-nighter, except you're doing it every day. Here's why. When you don't have a buffer, every decision becomes high stakes. Your brain can't rest. It's constantly scanning for threats. A check engine light isn't an inconvenience, it's an existential problem. So you develop what they call a scarcity mindset. You make short-term decisions because long-term planning is a luxury you can't afford. You don't invest in the course that might double your income in 2 years. You survive this month. And the cruel irony? That survival mode is exactly what keeps you stuck. Now, let's say you hit $5,000 in savings. You feel better, obviously. You've got a little breathing room. But here's what doesn't change yet. You're still one bad month away from zero. A medical bill, a car repair, a temporary loss of income. Any of those wipes you out. You're still playing defense. The researchers call this financial fragility. And fragility doesn't just describe your bank account. It describes your decision-making. You still can't take the risk. You still can't say no to the job you hate. You still can't negotiate hard because walking away isn't really an option. But then something shifts around $10,000. Not because you're rich now, you're obviously not, but because the math of survival changes. If you're spending $3,000 to live, $10,000 gives you 3 months, maybe 4 if you cut back. 3 months is long enough to find a new job, long enough to recover from an emergency without debt, long enough that a surprise expense is annoying, not catastrophic. And that shift from days to months unlocks something in your brain. Here's where it gets interesting. Once you have 3 to 4 months of runway, your brain stops running that survival Tetris game in the background. Suddenly, you have bandwidth. And with bandwidth comes something you didn't have before, the ability to think strategically. Let me give you an example. 2 people get the same job offer, same salary, same benefits. Person A has $800 in savings. Person B has $12,000. Person A takes the job immediately because they need it. They can't afford to keep looking. They can't risk the gap. Person B negotiates. They ask for $8,000 more. They wait, and statistically, they're more likely to get it. Same skills, same offer, different outcome.
That's not discipline, that's leverage. And the uncomfortable truth is that leverage doesn't come from being smarter or working harder. It comes from having enough money that you're not operating from fear. This is what people mean when they say it takes money to make money. They're not talking about investing in stocks. They're talking about the cognitive freedom to make better decisions. Once you cross $10,000, something else happens. You start spending less. I know, that sounds backwards. You'd think having more money would make you looser with it. But the data shows the opposite. Why? Because scarcity doesn't make you frugal, it makes you fatalistic. When you're broke, there's this weird logic that kicks in. I'm already at $340. What's another $60 on takeout? I'm not saving my way out of this anyway. It's the financial version of, I already ate one cookie, might as well eat the whole box. But when you hit $10,000, that equation flips. Now you have something to protect. You've built momentum, and you don't want to break it. Behavioral economists call this loss aversion. You value what you have more than what you might gain. So you stop making dumb impulse purchases, not because you're depriving yourself, because you finally got skin in the game. And the irony? The discipline everyone thinks you need to save money, that doesn't show up until after you've already saved it. Let's zoom out, because $10,000 doesn't just change how you spend, it changes what you can see. When you're in survival mode, opportunities are invisible. You can't start a side business. You can't take a lower-paying job with better long-term prospects. You can't invest in yourself. But $10,000 is seed capital, not for some app idea, for you. It's the money that lets you take an unpaid internship in a better industry, the money that covers your expenses while you study for a certification that doubles your salary, the money that lets you quit the dead-end job and take a risk on something with upside. And here's the part that nobody talks about. The return on that investment isn't 7% a year. It's not some index fund. The return is the difference between two entire life trajectories. Let me put a number on it. If you use $2,000 from your savings to get a credential that increases your salary by $10,000 a year, you've made a 500% return in year one. Compounded over a career, that's life-changing money. But you can only do that if you have the $2,000 to risk in the first place. That's the part the personal finance gurus don't tell you. Saving isn't about being responsible, it's about buying options. So why $10,000 specifically? It's not arbitrary. That number sits right at the edge of what researchers call agency. Below it, you're reactive. Things happen to you. Above it, you start making things happen. And that shift, it's not just financial, it's existential. People with less than $1,000 saved report significantly higher levels of anxiety and depression. People above $10,000 report better relationships, better health, even better sleep. Not because money buys happiness, but because it buys the absence of constant low-grade terror. And once that terror is gone, you show up differently. You're more confident in job interviews. You set boundaries in relationships. You take care of your health instead of deferring it. You stop saying yes to things you don't want because you're afraid of losing security you never had. The real joke of modern life is that the people who most need confidence and risk-taking ability are the ones structurally prevented from having it, not because they lack talent, because they lack a buffer. Now, here's where this gets darker. If $10,000 is the unlock, what happens to the people who can never reach it? Right now, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, not because they're irresponsible, because wages haven't kept up with the cost of survival. Rent, childcare, healthcare, student loans. For millions of people, saving $10,000 isn't a matter of discipline, it's mathematically impossible. Which means the gap isn't just between rich and poor. It's between people who can take risks and people who can't. Between people who can negotiate and people who can't. Between people who can invest in themselves and people who can't. And that gap compounds, because the person who reaches $10,000 doesn't stop there. They hit 20,000, then 50,000. Then they start investing. Then they start building real wealth. While the person stuck below the threshold stays stuck, not because they're not trying, because the system doesn't reward trying until you're already ahead. So here's the part no one wants to say out loud. Everything does feel different after $10,000, but not because you're suddenly successful, because you finally bought your way out of a rigged game where you were forced to play every round from a position of weakness. The real question isn't how to save $10,000. It's why we've built an economy where having less than that means you're operating with 13 less IQ points, no leverage, and no options. And if you're one of the people who made it across that line, congratulations. You've won access to the start.